The plane was boarding smoothly that morning at Dallas/Fort Worth International Airport. Business travelers scrolled through emails, families shuffled toddlers down the narrow aisle, and the air carried the low hum of anticipation that comes before takeoff. Among the crowd was 17-year-old Jalen Carter, quiet and focused, walking with his carry-on slung over one shoulder, hoodie up, AirPods in, his mind racing with numbers and ideas. Not teenage daydreams, but business calculations. He had just come from a pitch meeting with a venture capital group, and now he was flying back to Atlanta to finalize a major acquisition. It wasn't a vacation. It wasn't for fun. He was working, building something far bigger than himself. As Jalen took his seat in first class 3A, he pulled his hoodie slightly over his eyes and leaned back. For the first time in days, he allowed himself a moment of rest. That peace lasted only minutes. A sharp voice cut through the air. "Excuse me, young man," a middle-aged white flight attendant said with a raised brow. "You can't wear that hood here. It's airline policy. You need to remove it, or you'll have to leave the aircraft." Jalen blinked, slowly taking out one AirPod. "I'm sorry?" he asked, confused. "You heard me, the hoodie. You look threatening. We don't allow attire like that in first class. This is a premium cabin." Now other passengers began to turn their heads. Some tried to avoid eye contact. A few took out their phones. Jalen sat still, unsure if he should argue or comply. "I'm just trying to get home," he replied calmly. "Is there a written policy about hoodies?" The attendant didn't answer. Instead, she crossed her arms and said, "Sir, if you continue to argue, I'll call security. Please gather your things." Another employee, a supervisor, approached. She didn't ask questions. She didn't check his name or booking. She looked at his hoodie, his skin, and his age, and made a decision. "You need to exit the plane, sir. We'll rebook you on the next flight," she said coldly. Silence. Then murmurs. Jalen stood up, his face expressionless. Not angry, not loud, just hurt. "I understand," he said. He picked up his bag and walked off. What the crew didn't know, what even most of the passengers didn't know, was that Jalen Carter wasn't just another passenger. He wasn't even a high-profile celebrity or influencer. He was something even more extraordinary. He owned the airline. Not inherited, not gifted, built from the ground up. 4 years earlier, when he was just 13, Jalen had been sitting at a different airport next to his father, who was wheezing from heart issues. Their flight had been delayed for 9 hours. No help, no apology, no compassion. His father suffered a mild heart attack while waiting and passed away later that week. That moment changed Jalen's life forever. He swore he would never again feel powerless in a system that didn't care. That summer, while other kids played video games, Jalen read books on aviation, business, and logistics. He learned to code. He created an app that helped travelers avoid delays by tracking real-time airport efficiency. The app went viral, and by 15, he had turned it into a multi-million-dollar tech startup. Instead of selling, he reinvested. He purchased a struggling regional airline on the brink of bankruptcy and rebranded it into Skylift Air with a mission to make air travel human again. He focused on equity, access, and second chances. He hired ex-cons. He paid for single moms to train as pilots. He introduced transparency, comfort, and dignity into every corner of the flying experience. He was the youngest airline CEO in history, and the flight that kicked him off? That was his plane, his brand, his vision. Within hours, a video posted by a fellow passenger exploded on social media. The caption read, "Black teen kicked off first-class flight for wearing a hoodie. Turns out, he owns the airline." The clip showed the quiet confrontation, Jalen's calm exit, and then a still image of him walking alone down the jet bridge, the hoodie still on. Skylift's corporate office was flooded with messages. Celebrities tweeted in outrage. Customers demanded answers. Every major news outlet requested interviews. By the next morning, Skylift's board had convened an emergency meeting in Atlanta. Jalen arrived, dressed in a sharp gray suit, but underneath that same black hoodie. Not out of spite, but out of principle. He walked into the boardroom where the same flight crew now sat with tight jaws and nervous hands. Jalen stood at the head of the table and began to speak. I started Skylift because I believed people deserved better. My father died waiting in a terminal where no one cared enough to help. I built this airline so no one else would be treated like he was. And yet, I was just treated like a criminal because I wore a hoodie. Because I looked like someone you didn't expect to see in first class. Or in control. His voice didn't crack, but the room was still. This is not about me. This is about every young black kid who's been told they're dangerous for dressing in comfort. Every entrepreneur who's underestimated because of where they come from. Every person who's been judged by a uniform instead of their heart. He took a breath. Skylift will not be just another airline. We will lead. And that starts today. Jalen didn't fire the flight attendant. Instead, he offered her a chance to learn. The airline launched mandatory cultural sensitivity training across all departments. They changed dress code policies. They implemented a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination. And the hoodie? It became a symbol. Jalen released a limited edition Skylift hoodie, embroidered with the words, "I belong here." Proceeds went to scholarships for young entrepreneurs of color. The media covered it for weeks. But the real impact wasn't in headlines. It was in hearts. People began sharing their own stories of being profiled, excluded, or dismissed. And they thanked Jalen for giving them the words, the strength, and the hope to believe again. In the end, Jalen didn't just reclaim his seat on a plane. He reclaimed dignity. For himself, for his community, for all of us. And he reminded the world that leadership isn't about age, color, or clothes. It's about vision, courage, and knowing who you are, even when others don't.